Life can hit hard, and sometimes it can get personal. Setbacks can affect our self trust, self worth, and self esteem. When those are damaged, it's hard to get moving.
But you've got to do something after the setback. Next on the Compounding Change podcast.
This is the Compounding Change Podcast, sharing stories of small but meaningful changes that compound into amazing impact. Brought to you by Shannon Davis and DavisCompoundingChange.com. Change happens fast. Take advantage. Discussions on this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to DavisCompoundingChange.com or this podcast. Now, here's your host, Shannon Davis.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Compounding Change and to our special mini-series Do Something. I'm Shannon and I'm here with my sister and co-host, Jenna. And today's show is brought to you by Jenna Stoliker, leadership coach and retreat guide. You can navigate your leadership path from strength of who you are. You can learn more at jennastoliker.com. Thank you, Jen, for sponsoring this show. What about this show made you choose to sponsor?
Ooh, great question, Shan. Well, I think because the topic today is really about setbacks, like what happens when your life changes unexpectedly, maybe expectedly, but there's a big change. I think so much of the work I do when I'm coaching leaders, it's usually leaders in a workplace, but honestly, this happens wherever you are in your life, whatever your role is. And it just seems so apropos. I've dealt with setbacks. I know you've dealt with setbacks. I think it's just something that we can all relate to. And it just felt a really poignant time to be like, how can I help you? How can I help this podcast? And that's why I thought sponsorship might be just one little way.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know I appreciate it and everybody else appreciates it too. And as you said, today's conversation is about something that we don't talk about enough, what it means to rebuild self-trust after facing a setback. So whether you've gone through a breakup or a career change by choice or not by choice, I know that's happening a lot in this world, even in my household, or even just a personal wake-up call, not just, but this episode's about what it takes to reconnect with yourself when life's knocked you off course. So last time, speaking of being knocked off course, we talked about and really kind of opened up about divorce, our own situations, right? Personal, what it felt like, how things fell apart, how the pieces we held on to as we found our footing again. So it was personal. But this episode's definitely isn't about finding the one. We're not giving dating advice. It's more about finding you again, about finding your voice, your values, your center again.
Right. Because I think what happens is like when life throws you that curveball, like, and you just said it, it could be like, it could be a job change, career change, whatever it might be. There's a relationship with something that is ending, and it can feel like things are just off, right? So it becomes this moment in your life where you start to question everything, and you really start to question everything about yourself, right? And when you're in that swirl of questioning stuff, like if you're not careful about where your thoughts are going and what you're telling yourself, it's very possible sometimes, because it feels like it's really off kilter, that you start to shape yourself around who others expect you to be instead of who you actually are. I think that's part of what this conversation is really going to be all about.
Yeah, it's like going down the Facebook rabbit hole, right? You know, where we just start doing, and we do that self-talk. But you know, I know that rebuilding trust, especially self-trust, was a big part of your journey. You know, I mean, I think maybe even more so because of your background and profession. So what would you say made rebuilding self-trust so difficult for you after everything you'd been through?
It was, yeah, what made it so difficult? I think because it shook me to my core is what it was. And I didn't I didn't even understand it at the time exactly what was happening and why I was feeling so off. And, so because you had alluded to like, so my background and all, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's this part of me because I have had this love of psychology and understanding why do we do what we do?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we respond the way we respond? So I've studied this at length. Definitely no expert, but I feel like I've really dove into the deep end of, your mental fitness, your mindset, just who you are and your values and whatnot. And what really shook me was I started to question my judgment. So anything that I knew to be true about who I was, I think in the
Mm-hmm.
midst of, because we are talking last time about divorce, that divorce also coupled with within that same season in my life was a layoff, an impending layoff. Um, it was
When it
like,
rains, it
wow,
pours.
everything's like falling apart. And I thought, well, who am I going to be? How do I shape shift into this next phase? What's this next phase going to look like? And I noticed like I lost connection with who I really was. I think that was probably the most difficult piece.
Mm.
I spent so much time, especially I'm going back to that particular season in my life where I really tried to avoid conflict. I never wanted to rock the boat because it was a tumultuous relationship and whatnot. But I also was carrying so many of these other ideas in my head around what it meant to be a good person or agreeable,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because of that, because of all of that, it's like I started to edit myself out of the relationship. And at some point, I realized, oh, that's not just, well, I'm a little misaligned, which was true. It really started to feel like self betrayal. And
Mm.
that takes a long time to come back from. You feel like you're rebuilding yourself from the ashes.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes that self-betrayal is more difficult to overcome than betrayal from another person because you maybe blame yourself more. What helped you reconnect with that inner voice, your your truth?
My truth, right? Well, I think first of all, it's recognizing, wow, I've strayed from who I know myself to be. That's kind of a hard one, right? Because it's really much easier to look outside yourself and
To
point your
blame
finger to the situation, the other people in it. Be like,
terrible
well, it
people
wasn't for
in our
them,
lives.
right? And it's
Yeah.
really easy to loop into that. And then
Yep.
at some point, you really have to look at yourself and go, okay, but what can I control? Well, what can I
Mm-hmm.
really manage here? And to actually say, oh my goodness, I've betrayed myself. That cuts deep,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that big epiphany doesn't like just happen like one day you're walking and you go, oh, that's what it is, because it's really hard to look in the mirror that way. But when you do, what you realize is that to get to that point, it's been maybe a series of small wake ups or a series of small reflections that kind of get woven together to create what is right in front of you that you can now fully claim.
Mm.
For me, I started paying attention to when I felt uneasy saying yes to something because I recognized
Yep.
there was a people pleaser portion that was not serving me well. And so I had to basically, in so many words, stop and ask, like, is this what I really want? Or am I just trying to avoid conflict? And through
Mm.
that, there's asking the question, and everyone may process it differently. Journaling helped a lot. And
Okay.
I will be the first to say it doesn't have to be a perfect journaling because I myself do not do that. I might journal every day for a week and then I don't for a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
right? But do what feels supportive for you. However, I do believe sometimes writing it down, it takes it out of your brain of all of the ideas that are swirling and you can start to see it. And somehow
Mm-hmm.
that almost like a tangibleness really is quite healing and a way to process. So I would write things down and just more about like noticing patterns. What was I
Yeah.
feeling in this moment? What were the patterns? Um, Start checking in with my body. Like, did I
Like
feel a tightness in my chest? Was it in my gut? Where was this? Was I exhausted after certain kinds of conversations? Maybe being around certain kinds of people? Those are all clues for me. So those are like the little things I talk about. Like it wasn't just like one big epiphany. It's like a lot of these little things all together. And then I had to stand back and be like, oh, this is what's happening. So that was me telling myself the truth, is by noticing those patterns, even when it was uncomfortable. Right.
Yeah.
And the more I got real with myself, the easier it became to like show up just more honestly with the people in my life.
Hmm. Yeah, that that resonates. That really resonates. A
Yeah.
couple things I was thinking of when you were saying about that is writing stuff down even when we're angry about something, right? It
Mhm.
gives clarity and just gives some focus to it. So that definitely, the journaling aspect um definitely sings sings to me. Although I've journaled and then I've written on January 1st, I'm going to keep this journal, and then I look back 6 months later, I'm like, good job. But but I have had to pause and ask myself those types of questions too. And I like the idea of journaling it. Questions like, am I being true to myself right now? And and like you said, I mean, this is a big one for me. Am I just being agreeable or avoiding conflict? I'm sure that people would say that I don't have a filter. You've said it, but but I do. I do.
You- You're funny. You're, so you may not have a filter in the same way that I have a filter.
Right.
And that-
Sometimes you don't. You don't.
right? But here's the funny thing is that when we all say not we all, for those of us who say or recognize that we're people pleasers, or there's some element of people pleasing at play, it looks different for each and every one of us.
Mm-hmm.
So you might say something really direct, but afterwards, because there's a part of you that wants to please, you may ruminate on, oh dear, why did I say that? Why? Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. And that just eats up all your bandwidth and
Mm-hmm.
you start to question who you are and why did I do that? For others, the people pleasing is like, I didn't say it and I should have. You know what? I should have said that. And then I just betrayed myself too because I didn't
Right.
speak up when I needed to speak up.
Right. How many times have you come to me with that? You're like,
Oh,
why didn't I think of that?
totally.
And I'm like,
I'm
I give you
brilliant
a
after the
sharp
fact.
tongue. I give you that sharp tongue, and you're like, I could have said that.
Yes, exactly, right? Well,
But
and
you have
so
to be true to
basically, so
yourself.
here it is. Self-trust means being honest with yourself, right? Like
Right.
even if honesty risks the outcome. And so I think maybe it's finding a friend, a partner who can help balance you out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
A sister.
A sister, right? Because the moment you start editing out yourself and you edit out your truth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's just maybe a life lesson for all of us, is that when you're trying to maybe, you want to try and keep the peace, but you really want to discern the when is it serving you to either speak up or not speak up, to be direct, or maybe try something from a less direct approach. But I think that betrayal piece that we're talking about has everything to do with like, how aware are you in what you're doing, and how intentional are you being. um, so that I think lends itself to, if we're going down this path of discerning what do we really know to be true, well, we're actually starting to touch on are you aware of what your core values are, right? Do you know what's really guiding you
Mm-hmm.
when you're making some of those decisions and trying to be really intentional? And here's the thing is like, I have, throughout all of this whole process, like I've come to learn and discover like there's a difference between the values that are really mine and ones that I've absorbed along the way, right? And to make that distinction, i i, I refer to them like as your core values. That's my stuff. That's, I don't know, I was born with it. It's like, just feels like it's so part of my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
The acquired values can feel like it's part of my DNA. However, sometimes they don't feel really good. It's almost like there's this like other little voice in you going, really? Why? Do we have to? Those may actually be a signal that those have been acquired values. And the acquired values are beliefs that get passed down from family, from your culture, from like the social media stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what you should look like, feel like, talk like, how you need to respond or behave in a certain way. Some of it's really appropriate stuff, but if it's really, really getting in your way, um, and it's not really lighting you up, consider that some of those values might actually be acquired values. And if that's the case, it's acquired. You can unacquire them. Sounds simpler, but
Mm-hmm.
when I just say it like that, but that's the thing, right? It's like if it's a core, it's part of who you are. That's the stuff that lights you up, even when no one's watching. It's going to be things like connection, integrity, creativity. Those things don't really change over the course of your life
Right.
as things change. The acquired values are those shoulds. And that's when we tie it back to the people pleasing piece.
Mm-hmm.
At least what was happening for me is it's the shoulds in my brain are don't rock the boat, be nice, not loud, always put others first, don't get divorced, don't go
Children
into
should be seen
debt.
and not heard.
Children should be seen and not
Maybe that one's
heard.
not
Well, some of
that
those
one's
might be,
pretty
be
that one's a
life
good one.
rule. Depends.
Right.
But I mean, there's these things and these. I think I heard one of my mentor coaches refer to it as uh, like your 13th commandment.
Uh,
You know,
yep.
what is it that you live by? And you're like, I'm gonna die on the cross for this one,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to stop and go like, but is it really true? I mean, is that just
Did I
acquired?
come up with that on my own?
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to be clear that, as I'm talking about like the core versus acquired values and in saying, okay, the acquired values you can unacquire, it doesn't mean that those acquired values are bad things, right? But it's when they start, or when maybe you start chasing them at the expense of who you really are, that's when that disconnection happens. And again, not saying it gets good or bad. That puts us into such a polarity kind of way of looking at things. And the world has enough polarity as it is, and things are really quite gray. There's just so many different shades
Mm-hmm.
in there, right? Uh, but all in all, I think that has something to do with like where trust or self-trust starts to break down, as if we're not really clear on what those values are, how they're guiding us, how intentional we are. And then all of a sudden you kind of wonder like, why do I feel so far away from myself? You worked hard to get where you are, but now what? Hi, I'm Jenna Stoliker, a leadership coach who helps people navigate change with intention. So you don't just survive the next chapter, you grow through it. Whether you're stepping into something new or wondering what's next, let's find your next right step. Learn more at jennastoliker.com.
That makes me think, though, let's talk about what it means to live in alignment, not with just what sounds good, but what actually feels true. And of course, I relate everything to life, to everything I do, and it applies to so many areas: your relationships, your work, your parenting, and even how we care for ourselves. Thinking about that on my run. You talk about
Yeah.
journaling. That's when I'm brilliant, is when I'm running.
Yeah.
It's gone. It's gone the minute I get home. But so since I have nothing, what did that look like for you? Maybe you
Oh,
can share. Back on you.
nice, Shan.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I run and it all goes out with the sweating, I guess. But so what did that look like
So,
for you? Or what
okay,
does
so let me
that did
fill in the
that?
blanks. So
Yeah.
I will. Well, okay, so probably really true to form, because this is a whole podcast around like just do something, right? And it's
Mhm.
about small, consistent actions. For me, it was about small, consistent actions. And I think that's also why we're having these kinds of conversations, is that you and I both realize it's not some big step or big epiphany. It's
Mhm.
all of these little things and how they add up. There is a level of consistency in how you are consistent will look different from one person to the next, but there is something about consistency through all of this. So for me, I've had to work on saying no without over explaining.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it just means no. Sometimes
Yep.
it means thank you. However, I choose to, or I'm going to say no to this. And, there's a little bit of context setting around it, but it's not like all of this explaining stuff. Allowing myself to take up space was another one. And letting go of that idea that I was too much, which, as in hindsight, I think about that's in very unique situations where that occurred, because mostly for me, it's I'm not enough.
Mm.
And really challenging myself on, well, what does that mean? And how will I know if I am enough? Like, is
Mm-hmm.
this like some lofty thing that somehow in my brain I've set up some really odd, like unattainable goal? But all in all, it's like if I abandon myself just to be accepted by others because I want their love, which is a really natural human trait. But if
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it in the pursuit of I need to do this to please this person or to in order to get their love or their affection or their approval, I'm not honoring my core values.
Right.
So that's been a real big one for me. Yeah.
I can see that seems to be a common message with us, right? Or a theme of our conversations. I think this is kind of like just counseling for us. Who cares who's listening, right? But
It could
but
be.
we're focused on, I mean, piece by piece, little by little. It's practice. It's like when the kids practice golf, which I should probably do someday. But anyway, but oh my gosh, that does remind me though, stupid story, but funny story is years ago I was interviewed for our CrossFit gym, and I was like a deer in headlights when the interviewer, Dan DeRue in Colorado, asked what someone needed to get before coming to the gym. And I literally answered so many different ways. I mean, this is like live TV. And he finally said motivation. So, of
Uh,
course, me not keeping my emotions to myself, I think I actually rolled my eyes. But all of it takes work, and you don't just pick it up off the floor or flip a switch and suddenly have motivation any more than you just end up having self-trust.
oh my God. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Right. And I think I don't know, there's books that we read and some of them are very, very helpful. But I think oftentimes we position some of these crucial life skills and just how do we be,
Mhm.
be the best version of ourselves. It gets positioned in a way that one feels very clean, and it's not. You don't just wake up one day or somebody says, hey, you just do this, and I go, oh, okay, I just do this one thing and I'm going to get it. I'm just going to do this, and I get my motivation.
Mhm.
It's a lot of little things, right? And it what that means is it gets built in us by showing up for ourselves over and over again, right? It's the
Mhm.
small stuff like following through on something that you said you're going to do. It's saying no when it matters. It's being honest when it's awkward, and when you mess up, and we all do, right? When there's no day that just feels like, wow, that was just so perfect.
I had
Mm,
one once.
Maybe there could be, yeah, it could, it could be years,
One time. It's been a
right?
few years.
Right, but it happens.
Right.
Um, that when you feel like those, like there's a blip or you feel like it's a failure, there's just merely feedback,
Mhm.
right? It's an old pattern that says, in that old pattern it says, see, you can't be trusted. See, you're no good at that. But the new stuff that wants to come forward says, okay, so what can I learn here? What can I learn from this? I
Mhm.
think that's really what we've been talking about is it's taking small actions, doing small things. You start to see how you're doing it in a consistent way. All of a sudden it starts to reshape how you view yourself. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, like, oh, I got this, which means the next time something happens, because you've built this history and you look at your track record, you go, oh, more data. I'm going to learn. There's a next
Mhm.
evolution here for me. Right.
Yep.
So I think that's a really big deal. Like that's the shift. That's how growth happens. And especially, when you want to live from being aligned in your values, just know that it is a whole process unto itself.
Mhm. Yeah. So much it's correlation. I just did my CrossFit recertification or level 2 certification,
Yeah.
and of course there's repeatable actions. You can document it, you can chart it, you can see the differences, but it also reminds me of PQ, what we
Mhm.
did with your stuff. And this stuff is not necessarily second nature. We need to work on ourselves and sometimes fight those old mantras that we're telling ourselves. And so before we get into today's challenge, I know we want to kind of wrap this up to not make these too long because you and I could just keep talking, of course. But I just want to hold that thought for a moment and ask, because I think some people might be wondering, how do you even know what your values are?
Mm.
And what helped you figure yours out? I know you're big on processes, Jen. And did you have a list, or is there a list that you can share with everyone?
Oh, great question, right? Because I had heard about this for a while. Like I think even like as when we were kids, mom talking about like what are your values? Those will guide you. And yes, a lot of it was in some way acquired, right? Because we're being taught what
Mm-hmm.
values are. Um, but even then, there wasn't like a list of values. Now, for some people, they don't need a list. For me and the way I process, I need to like put my hands on something. I want a
Right.
list.
Right.
Tell me what it is. Give me some sort of like guide.
Yep.
And I think the values aren't always obvious. And that's why I like having that list, because maybe there's something in a list of values that I hadn't really considered as actual a value.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say first, I mean, okay, first of all, there are lists, and I think we'll include that, include a list or like a guidebook
Okay.
in the notes for this episode.
Yeah.
Um, but if you don't care for a list, or even if you do like a list, here's the one thing I think is really important: is first just start paying attention. I do this exercise with my clients. I say, just notice what you notice.
Mm-hmm.
No judgment attached. So it's part of this paying attention to what lights you up. Pay attention to what drains you. What do you keep coming back to even when no one's watching? No, there's no like prestige or, oh, I need to be doing this or whatever it might be.
Right.
But just notice what you notice about yourself in certain situations.
Yeah.
That will start to give you insight into what your core values are.
Yeah, definitely. So it's not about second guessing yourself, but more about checking in with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. So I will um say, when your actions, when your words, when your choices feel aligned and it's not performative, that's always a clue, right? Um so that can be like the clue, and then sometimes it's like, well, now how, like, if I were to find a word for that, what would that be? And what I have witnessed over the years, even not just in myself, but even like with the leaders that I'm coaching, is it is really helpful sometimes to see that list of words, because we may have a feeling, but we're not quite sure how to describe it. And sometimes just simply looking at words like integrity, freedom, connection, peace, creativity, it might spark in you like, oh, that's it. That's how I would describe it for myself. That's what I would describe creativity like, or what
Mm-hmm.
freedom means for me. And then asking, like, am I living in alignment with any one of those? Or am I compromising them in ways I've just gotten used to?
So for someone listening who wants to reconnect with their values or reclaim their inner compass, what's
Yes.
one thing they could do? Keep it
Okay.
going.
Let's wrap this up. Let's really ground it in something that's actionable, a small action. So I referenced a values guide that
Mm-hmm.
we'll include in the show notes. So go there, download that. Well, that's free to download. It has instructions in how to assess your own core values, gives you a whole list, because I like lists of values. However, just because it's on the paper, written a certain way, I really encourage anybody who's looking at that, look at the word, make up your own definition. All right. I mean, you might see what's on the paper and you go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. If it doesn't, no, it's just a guide. It's a
Mm-hmm.
guidebook. Change it. Right. But at least it gives you an idea, it gives you a prompt. So that would be the first one. Reference that guidebook, look at what the core values are, choose 3 to 5 values that really resonate for you. That's your starting point. Right. Now, if you want a little bit of an extra layer to that, because you're like, okay, I got to the 3 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
core values, ask yourself, did I choose this value or was it handed to me? That's where
Mm-hmm.
you make the distinction between, is it core value or is it an acquired value? And that I think is a really great way to get started.
Okay.
If you want to like stretch, because I think we've done
Right. Right. Of
stretch
course, you always have something
goals.
deeper Got
Yeah,
something
yeah,
more?
right? Okay. Choose one of those values, put it into action. How about that?
Okay.
Say or do one thing this week that reflects what you believe, even if it feels a little vulnerable, right? Maybe that's like setting a boundary, asking for what you need, or speaking up about something that matters, right? The key is
Mm-hmm.
really to let your voice be the lead in all of this, not somebody else's, like, you should say it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Be you, right? Like, be really
Right.
authentic. And then just simply notice like what shifts when you do that, right? Because anything that matters, it's that self-trust is what you're practicing, and it's only builds when you
Mm-hmm.
practice it.
But I'd like to have a little caveat there and say that if you get pulled over by a police officer, that 65 mph means 65. You can't say that doesn't align with my core values and give them a
Very
whole
true.
spiel on. So, yes, you can
Yes.
rewrite the script, but you can't rewrite it with everything, right?
There are rules. Yes, we're talking
There are
values are
some
one
things that are
thing.
not just suggestions. Some
Yes,
rules are rules. But
yes,
anyway,
exactly.
self-trust isn't something you find. It's something you practice. And we don't become great at something that we don't practice. So this is one more area to work on. And we hope today gave you a little encouragement to keep showing up for yourself.
Absolutely. And if this episode happened to speak to you, please feel free to share it. I encourage you to share it. Sharing's caring. And tag us at hashtag compounding change challenge. Let us know if you took any of those steps or something different, but what kind of action you did. Share it. There's something really fabulous about accountability in that way when you start to share it.
Yep, and we're on Facebook and Instagram but hey, make sure you subscribe, follow, or like this podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. And next time we're talking about navigating career change. We kind of touched on that being a topic, but whether you're shifting directions, re-entering the workforce, or stepping into something new, it can definitely stir up a lot of your life. So from your finances to imposter syndrome and excitement, but we'll break it down and give you the next right steps. We'll see you then.
This has been the Compounding Change Podcast with Shannon Davis. If you are a firefighter or first responder, you know that change happens fast. Life changes, finance changes, compounding change. Shannon Davis is a certified retirement counselor who understands the needs of Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters members. Click on daviscompoundingchange.com to learn more. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to daviscompoundingchange.com or this podcast. Please note that investment involves risk and no statements made in this recording are indicative of future performance. The Compounding Change Podcast is brought to you by Shannon Davis.